Hi, I'm Sean.
I'm Rhonda.
And let's talk about receiving influence from your spouse.
So, from the research of Dr. John Gottman and his colleagues, it has been found consistently that marriages work to the extent the man accepts influence from and shares power with his wife.
You know, they found that women normally will be more inclined to receive influence from their husbands. So the dynamic that we're talking about here is more about the husband receiving influence from his wife. This is what we really see that God intended when he said that he brought Eve to Adam, because he said, it's not good for man to be alone. You need somebody to help you. And that's what we're looking at.
And so, if you look at the wife as the helper, and then you realize that the man is supposed to leave father and mother and cleave to the wife, that means pursue. If he's supposed to pursue after his helper, doesn't that say something about receiving influence and sharing power? The way I look at it is when a woman marries a man, she's chosen who she will submit to.
Yeah.
And when they might not agree in decision making, he should make the call, but he should do so, and he should marry someone from which, for the rest of his life, he's going to pursue that help from. That doesn't mean he's led about by the nose by her.
Right.
But it being influenced does mean that when he's making decisions, she can definitely tell it's he and she, not just he.
I think a wife has it ingrained in her by God to influence her husband in decision making. And a lot of times when it comes down to a difference in the decision they make, a man can sometimes feel like his wife is pushing her way when she is sharing her thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And a lot of times she's just wanting to feel heard and like he understands what she's saying, not that she's trying to make the decision.
And I would say, husbands, if you feel your wife is pushy and a little too enthusiastic and intense, maybe try making sure she feels heard.
Yeah.
And that whether or not you choose to do it the way she said, make sure that she knows you want to prayerfully consider, because if she's your God-given helper, and 1 Peter 3, she is to be honored because she's your gift from God to help you. She should feel that way. She should feel that honor, and that decisions are we decisions. And so it's important for the man. He can relieve this intensity by connecting with her and making her feel heard and honored.
God said the two shall be one, and that didn't mean that one of you was going to cease to exist and only one be seen. God put you both in the relationship with different viewpoints, and one viewpoint isn't better than the other. And what it is we have to learn how to appreciate what's different than ourselves and realize our spouse sees some things that we don't see, and that makes it more valuable because we don't see it.
Because isn't it easy for me to think so highly of what I see and what I understand? But in the marriage, what we have to accept is God put a he and a she together. They're going just naturally to see it differently. Mm-hmm. And that other facet contained in my spouse is what I might be overlooking. And God meant in the marriage and in parenting for he and she to come together into one. Because we know that in the beginning, both what was feminine and masculine was all God. And God took out the feminine part and said, here's the help you need. I'm just going to package it right here for you so that it's all in one place, all of the stuff that is God. And so that which is feminine is not inferior to that which is masculine. It's both God, and it's both meant to come together into one.
Yeah. I think one thing we have to watch out as husbands is not to ignore the issues that come up, maybe the ones that our wife brings up to us, because if we ignore those issues, we're going to cause negativity to build in her.
And so in a lot of marriages that are struggling, a lot of the reason that they're struggling is because the husband is ignoring what she brings to the table. He is consistently perhaps making decisions that please him and ignoring her, she's not really in the picture. It's more he than she. It's more of a dictatorship, or like, almost like he's the parent and she's the child. She doesn't really have any room or authority in decision making. He's not sharing power in that decision making.
Well, this is amazing because, in the beginning, God said, let us make man in our image and in our likeness and let them rule over all the earth. God was sharing power with us. And this is a perfect example of how the husband is to share power with his wife. We're in this together, and the husband shouldn't be one that is making all the decisions. He needs to share that with his wife.
And so if it's mostly he being expressed or mostly she being expressed, that's two. It's not one.
Yeah.
What does one look like? One is a good blend, a good healthy blend of he and she. If somebody's invisible, you don't have one going on. And so to the extent somebody is missing in this decision or in this picture, you need to say, wow, am I missing something God intended? Am I allowing God to make us one?
Yeah.
Or am I so me-focused? I don't have room for anybody else in this one except me and myself, and I'm what is going to express here, whether that's the man or the woman.
We need to be considering each other's feelings and opinions. This is especially true for the husband, paying attention to what his wife is experiencing and her thoughts and feelings.
And when you see that going on, when you see a man genuinely coming across to his spouse in a way that she feels heard, she feels valued, we are one in this marriage. It's not him and I'm just an adult child in this family.
Yeah.
But I'm a valid part of this relationship, and we operate as a team. They're going to get along more smoothly. But when he rejects what she brings to the table, when she doesn't see herself in this union, but she feels she's invisible, the negativity begins to increase. And a man can look at his wife as if she's the problem, but the research shows it's usually the man that started it, because they watch couples from being newlyweds on until they either continue to stay married or they eventually divorce. And so they see all these similarities, and they have found a definite relationship between the man rejecting his wife's input, not blending with that, and her becoming more and more negative.
It's interesting to find that women are more likely to receive influence naturally from their husbands. Women are kind of open to that. There's the way they're wired. And men have to work at this. And that's something that we need to remember, that it takes effort, and it's something we have to plan to do.
And one thing we women do that doesn't help is we present what we bring to the table harshly or poorly. And we kind of encourage the man to withdraw.
Yeah.
And maybe we use too many words, too much emotion, we're very intense, we come across as aggressive, we pursue. And, we might could do a little more baiting. Hey, I have some thoughts on that topic if you would like to hear them. Could we make time for me to share that with you? And then be able to boil it down. Don't monologue at length.
Yeah.
And make your husband sit there and listen to a lecture. But we can set ourselves up to be more easily heard, and we might need to ask our husbands, how could I present better so that it would be easier for you to hear what I bring to the table?
That's so valuable, really, in our relationship. If something isn't coming across the way that you like it or you need to hear it, find a positive way to let your spouse know, hey, could you try saying it this way? I think I could hear that a little bit easier if you could word it like this,
right,
without saying it with a jab that sounds like, you shouldn't talk to me this way.
And the thing is, if one person or the other is consistently just not seeing it, what he or she brings to the table is not good, wrong, you have to say, well, did you vow in covenant to become one with this individual? You really should allow that oneness, or you're going to tear apart what should become one, because it's going to remain two, but both of you innately know it shouldn't be two.
Yeah.
And so, you can find something agreeable about what's said. You can say something like, wow, thank you for sharing. I want to pray about that.
Yeah.
and see what I feel about that. Can you give me some time to just mull that over?
And this is an example of when the two of you really see something differently. How do you connect in a positive way to say, wow, I appreciate your sharing your feelings and your thoughts about that. I need some time to think about that.
And you know, sometimes we can boil it down. Sometimes we want all of what we bring to the table. And what if we boil it down to, well, I would be fine with it if I at least had this in the picture.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a little easier to connect with.
Yeah, finding the smallest thing that you can connect with your spouse on, and then it can kind of grow from there.
Yeah, so you want to realize too that when a man escalates during conflict, let's say they're talking through something, and the man begins to escalate, that actually can set up, or it can reveal, I guess you would say, the longevity of the relationship. Because basically when that's happening, the woman's going to feel not heard, like he's rejecting what she's bringing to the table, he's pushing her back.
Yeah.
And, you know, when that happens, and it happens too much, there's a distance, and that distance begins to increase as one or the other doesn't feel that they are part of this marriage. Because let's face it, if a husband or a wife feels invisible in the marriage, over a period of time they could literally become invisible in the marriage and exit the marriage.
Right.
And so for both parties to appreciate this relationship and feel one, they need to feel accepted by the other.
You know, studies have found that men are more likely to bring in distressing, they call it the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the negative behaviors that are really going to bring the relationship down. Men are more likely to bring that in. So men need to watch the level of negativity that they have in a time of conflict in the relationship.
Think of the woman as a responder.
Yeah.
She's responding to what he brings to the table. So what if he is more peaceable and more accepting, finding something positive about what she said.
Yeah.
And then, you know, realizing that if consistently he's not joining up with her in decision making, there may be a perspective problem going on deeper in his heart.
Yeah.
Maybe he has trouble hearing anybody else's perspective. Maybe he sees things as black and white. This could go either way, actually. But, you know, my way is right, your way is wrong. And it may not be. It may be a difference in preference.
Man, this is such an important thing to work on in the relationship, to be able to hear each other and receive influence from each other.
And so a man can learn from his wife how to be better influenced by her.
Yeah.
A man might ask questions like, so how could I make you feel heard? What is it that you need to feel safe to approach me and to freely share what you're seeing?
What makes you feel like I'm seriously considering or prayerfully considering what you present? A lot of times, you know, we can hear what our spouse is saying, and then instead of maybe repeating back to make sure that we correctly caught the message, we just present our viewpoint, maybe an opposing viewpoint, and we don't really connect with them on the value of what they presented.
It's very important to connect with a woman on an emotional level.
Yeah.
You know, so don't try to connect with her like you'd connect with a male. That doesn't work. You know, it makes a woman feel pretty distant. She's not a male.
In other words, men have to add a little bit of emotion, a little bit of flavor into that connection to spice things up.
And the thing is, one thing they found in the research is pretty simple, actually, to make a marriage work. It requires being polite, kind, sensitive, to focus, to realize that when you come into covenant, you're joining and blending with another person. You can't act single anymore.
Wow. Sometimes we think that if we're experiencing difficulty in our marriage relationship, it's made up of really big, complex things. And a lot of times it's just the small things that we do to connect with each other that make all the difference.
And so when we're having all these negative thoughts and feelings, they are building, they can overpower the positive ones, and we lose sight of the positive ones. We choose what we'll think on,
Yeah.
and our perspective determines how we will respond. So we would present to you and challenge you, prayerfully consider, Lord, how do we blend in this marriage? How do we become one? That we not remain in certain areas at least, two. Because if I see that if we see that we're clashing, that's probably a sign we're two in that area.
Mhm.
We have not yet found unity, and so how can we find a good blend of he and she? And that should actually be the goal of working through issues. Is not how can I get my way or how can you get your way or should I defer to you, but how can we find something that's uniquely us about this?
I think sometimes too that the way a husband treats his wife can sometimes be a image of how he sees that his relationship between him and God is. And if he sees that his relationship with God is, God is not sharing power with him, and that there's a receiving of influence there, he's not going to do that with his wife either.
That's a good thing to note, to look at. We can use these things in our marriage to kind of look at where am I spiritually.
Yeah.
Because I think one thing that we see with couples is what's going on in the marriage can a lot of times show us in a physical way what's going on spiritually between us and God.